Hi, I'm Lori with London Drugs. Thank you for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about potty training and going through some tips and tricks on how to make this a successful journey with your child. I have Renee from Kimberly-Clark joining me today. Hi Renee, thanks for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm really excited to be here today to talk about potty training tips and tricks. I work for Kimberly-Clark as the Consumer Insights and Analytics Manager on the Pull-Ups Training Pants and Goodnights Youth Pants brands. My day job is to study parents' behaviors, frustrations, attitudes, and habits around potty training and help our innovation teams focus on bringing the most meaningful products to the shelf. Today, this Facebook Live event is a unique experience for me, getting to share what I know about potty training with parents or caregivers who are about to embark on this journey.
We're excited to have you here. And please feel free to post your questions and comments, and we will do our very best to answer them here and be able to go through and help you start successfully on this journey. The reason why we chose potty training as a topic is that there's always lots of questions. I know I have 3 children. I've gone through it 3 times, and each time it was a different experience, and each child is very different. So we're hoping to be able to help you this evening as we go through the information we have to share. Some of the topics we're going to talk about are what are the signs that your child is ready, when to start and how to start potty training, tips to help along through the process, understanding your child's potty training personality, because each child is different, as I've already said. How long can potty training take? And I know that it can be different for each child. And then also we want to talk about nighttime bedwetting. And so I think probably the most common question out there is, when should we start potty training?
Right. So there's no right age to start potty training. I think you'll hear us say several times that every child is different, and really parents should be looking for signs from their child's behavior that they're ready to start potty training rather than relying on a certain age milestone. Typically, there are signs of readiness that start to show around age 2, but if you get to 2.5 or close to 3, you shouldn't be too worried. You just might want to talk to your pediatrician at the 3-year-old well checkup if you're not seeing any of those signs at that point.
Okay, that's great. And now you mentioned readiness. What are some signs of readiness?
Right, so there are lots of cues your child can give you that they might be ready to potty train. One of them is copying potty behaviors of the parents or other household members, or showing an interest in the potty, flushing it and asking questions. Mm-hmm. Others, signs that their bladder might be getting ready to potty train, might be having a diaper that's dry for a longer period of time than you're used to seeing with them, or waking up from a nap dry is another example. They might also start to tug at a dirty or wet diaper, or even verbally ask to be changed. And I think the most obvious sign might be if they verbally start to talk about that they need to go to the bathroom. That's showing they're actually recognizing the physical cues that they're about to go to the bathroom.
Great. And for those of you who are just joining us now, my name is Lori. I'm with London Drugs, and this is Renee. She's with Kimberly-Clark. And tonight we're talking about potty training and giving tips and tricks on how to make that journey go a little bit smoother for you. We have some questions coming in. Bernadette asks, besides age, how do we know if our child is ready for potty training? And I think we've talked about readiness there. Is there any other tips that you have?
I really think just looking for those cues or signs that your child's ready is the best place to start, and then gradually starting to introduce the idea of potty training and reading their reaction and signs, and if they're showing interest at that point.
Okay, great. Next question is from Nick, and is using candy as a reward a bad idea?
So every family is different, and it's best to work with use what works best for your family, right? But some kids work really well with rewards, and small candy might be a good way to do that, like a mini marshmallow or an M&M if they try or are successful at going to the bathroom. Some other children, and we'll talk about personalities later, some personalities lend themselves better to this, but some like to use a sticker chart and build up to a bigger reward as they progress along the journey.
Okay. And once a child starts to show signs, how should a parent start? What should be the next step?
Sure. As I mentioned before, really starting to introduce some small ideas or concepts around the potty, engaging their interest. And any of us who have been around toddlers know that their interest can change from minute by minute or even day by day. So if you don't see that they're interested, you can always try again in a short period of time. Things you can do are start talking about the potty, having your child follow you or your partner or anyone else in the house and talk more about what's happening when you're going to the bathroom. Talk to them about the potty itself, how it works. And also, there are a lot of books that you can get about potty training to read about it. And then you can also start introducing pull-ups or training pants with your child even early on. And training pants are great for your child to start. They go on and up and down like big kid underwear, and they're great to get your child used to that motion, something that they need to master. They have stretchy sides that help the child learn to pull up on their own as they're progressing and provide some absorbent protection for parents so you don't have to deal with leaks and messes at the same time.
That's great. Again, for those of you who are just joining us now, my name is Lori. I'm with London Drugs, and this is Renee, and she's with Kimberly-Clark. And tonight we are talking about potty training and going through some tips and tricks on how to make that a smooth and enjoyable journey with your child. Next, we have another question from Carolyn, and she says her daughter is 2.5, and she started potty training a couple of months ago, but is also going to daycare. She started out really interested and eager to use the potty. Then she became scared of the potty and the toilet, and would tell her that when she was going in her pants after the fact. And so Carolyn is saying that she believes her fear was induced from being yelled at and made to feel bad about not going in the potty at daycare. So pressure leading to stress and resistance, and she's wondering how to help her.
That's a great question, and there's a couple pieces to it, I think. One, when your child is potty training and is in the care of someone else during the day, like a daycare provider or another child care provider, it's really important to have a discussion with them about what approach you're taking at home and what approach they are taking as well, and talk if you have any concerns about things that might be happening. So I'd first start with a discussion with your daycare provider if you're having some questions. Second, potty training is really a journey and it's not necessarily linear. So there are times when children show interest and start to make some progress, and you might see or feel that you're going backwards for a while, and that's completely normal in the potty training process.
I have another question. How would a parent learn more about their child's personality? You've talked a bit about children's personality, and how can they learn more about that?
Right. So as we've talked about, every child is different, and that's not very helpful from a parent's perspective to know what to do about that, right? So the Pope's brand partnered with Dr. Heather Wittenberg. She's a child psychologist and development expert to bring to life potty personalities. Your kids are born with a personality, and it develops as they grow from babies to toddlers, and that also translates to potty training, and working with your child's personality is important and key to the success along the journey. You can go to pullups.com for much more information about each of these personalities, but I will cover a short description of them, and I think most parents will recognize what personality type or maybe perhaps two that their child fits in. The first potty training personality is the puppy. Puppies are ready and willing and eager to please. They have a lot of energy, but they're easily directed to what you want them to focus on. So once they learn the rules, they very quickly potty train. Pretty quick to potty train, and I'm as a mother who's potty trained too, I wish I had a puppy. Actually, that would have been a much easier journey. There's also the owl, and the owl also tends to potty train pretty quickly. The owl's careful, detailed, and likes to follow directions. So it's really important when you're starting potty train with the owls to lay out what the expectations are and what you want them to do, and they'll learn pretty quickly in that space. They tend to resist a little bit if they're pressured too hard, but in general also train pretty easily.
Okay.
The next three tend to be a little bit longer or meandering journey in potty training. And the first of those is the bear cub. The bear cub is independent, free-spirited, and fun-loving. Bear cubs are often too busy playing with toys, eating their food, and really they're too busy to notice or care that their diaper's wet or to be interrupted to go try using the potty. It's important with bear cubs to make potty training exciting and fun and different. They do well with games and anything to keep things engaging along the way. I think the best tip is just try to be silly and change things up and really be patient along the way with your bear cub.
I think I had one of those.
I did as well. The next personality is a turtle. Turtles are shy, nervous, and resistant to change. So they're really comfortable with the status quo. They might be interested in potty training, but skeptical about what it all means to them. And they're pretty persistent and strong-willed. Parents can sometimes refer to them as being stubborn in the potty training process. But really they have, a strong sense of common sense and self-preservation, and treating them with kindness and patience will go a long way in convincing them to change what they're doing. The turtle, again, introducing potty training ideas and concepts gradually without pressure can be pretty successful with turtles.
Okay.
Then the last one is the squirrel, which I think is probably the most self-explanatory personality description. Turtles, we already talked about those. Squirrels are driven, energetic, and highly distracted. So they have lots of energy and go from activity to activity and can't be slowed down to potty train. They might show that they're interested in training, but not be willing to take the time to actually pause and try to use the potty. And again, games and things to keep things interested and focused is really your goal if you have a squirrel. Another really important part of squirrels is making sure they get enough playtime to burn off some of that energy so they can focus on potty training.
Those are great tips. For those of you who are just joining us now, my name is Lori. I'm with London Drugs, and this is Renee, and she's with Kimberly-Clark. And today we are talking about potty training tips and tricks to help you move through this journey of potty training your child. So the next question we have is, what might a parent need to get started on this journey?
Great. So I already mentioned training pants. They help children feel like a big kid and motivate to potty train. They also come in gender-specific designs, so they can be, something your child's looking forward to wearing, big girl or big boy underwear, and they're a good transition phase. Other things you want to consider getting is a potty seat, like this one here, that sits on the floor, or a potty seat that you actually set on top of a toilet in your bathroom. Some parents start with one and not the other. Others try both. It's really whatever works best for you or your child. You'll also want to invest in a step stool so they can actually climb onto the potty on their own and reach the sink to wash their hands. During potty training, toddlers are really learning how to wash their hands well and making sure they can reach the sink and soap on their own. You may also want to consider getting flushable moist wipes. We have a package of Cottonelle here. It really helps with the cleaning process. Wiping is one of the last skills in the potty training process that kids master, and flushable wipes can help with that.
Mm-hmm. I know from my experience, one of my kids spent some time on the potty seat, and one of them was his preferred method for much longer than the others. And it is interesting what you say is how different each child is different, and whatever their preference is, you might have to try a few different ways to get to find where they're most comfortable.
Absolutely, and of course, considering your own space in your house, one may work better for you than another as well.
That's an excellent point, yes. Great. Well, for those of you who are just joining us, my name is Lori. I'm with London Drugs, and this is Renee with Kimberly-Clark. And tonight we're talking about potty training, tips and tricks, and how to help make this journey a little bit more smooth, as smooth as possible. Next question we have is, once a child is staying dry during the day, how long does it take them to stay dry overnight?
It's a great question, and one lots of parents have. I think it's important for parents to recognize that staying dry in daytime potty training is completely different than waking up dry. I will sound like a broken record again, as I mentioned, but it truly is dependent on your child, and children typically staying dry overnight is a delay from staying dry during the day. It's often related to your bladder and brain connection, and it is something that the child can't necessarily control, and is very normal. So really it's best to, continue to be positive and motivate your child, or be positive and encourage your child, but also not make them feel bad for waking up dry in the morning.
Can it also be impacted by how deep, if they're a deep sleeper?
It can, and I think that's part of the brain to bladder connection of it. It just might not be waking them up. And additionally, toddlers have to be willing to wake up in the night in the dark and find their way to the bathroom as well. So a nightlight is a good idea as well.
We have another question come in. Shannon has asked, what are the signs to look for in a toddler, whether a toddler that's ready? Sure.
So signs to look for to see if your toddler's ready, it's really important to look for the signs rather than an age. And if a child is expressing interest in the potty, whether it be behaviors of other family members or people in your household, or asking questions about the potty, that's a sign. Another sign might be they're staying dry in their diaper for longer periods of time, or waking up from their naps dry. They could also be tugging at a wet diaper or asking for a change if their diaper's wet. If you see those signs, that might be a good time to introduce some ideas about potty training and see how they react.
Great. For those of you who are just joining us, my name is Lori. I'm with London Drugs. This is Renee, and she's with Kimberly-Clark. And today we are answering your questions on potty training. So please feel free to post your questions, and we will answer as many of them as we can. We have another question from Melanie. How common are regressions? My son decided to potty train on his own one day, but has regressed since after being sick.
Sure, so that's also another great question. So there's a difference between setbacks and regressions. A setback is really when you're making some progress along the potty training journey, and then all of a sudden your child's not interested or willing to participate, or not having as much success. The regressions, on the other hand, are if your child's been dry during the day for a period of time, maybe a couple weeks or a month, and then all of a sudden they're no longer successful at staying dry. That might be something you want to check with your physician, your family physician, and see if there's anything that's causing that from a medical perspective.
That's good to know. For those of you who are just joining us, my name is Lori. I'm with London Drugs, and this is Renee. She's with Kimberly-Clark, and today we're talking about potty training and sharing our tips and tricks. So please post your questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. I know when I was going through this process with my son, we had a road trip we had to go on, and he was doing really, really well with the potty training, and we put him in a training pant, just because it was a car ride, and we stopped about halfway for lunch, and he refused to use the public toilet in the restroom, and I had packed the potty for when we were at our destination, but it was buried deep in the car, and there was no way it was going to come out. So we thought, well, maybe we can make it to the next place. But halfway there, he had to go. And we were in the middle of the mountain passes, and there was no way we were going to be able to pull over. And so we told him to just go in the training pant. It's okay. And he fought it, and then eventually did go. And unfortunately, he then realized that it was okay to go in the training pant, and it made it a lot more difficult for us to train after that, because he knew that it was going to keep him dry.
Right. I think it's normal to have regressions, but I think it's also important to stay consistent. And there are times in your schedule when you have to be flexible and not be consistent, right? But I think talking to your child about what's different about today and making sure that they understand what your expectations are can help, but things can go backwards and take longer than you expect.
It's just normal, I guess, right? Another question is from Angela. Anything specific to try when toddler is potty trained during the day, but sleep is being broken because she's waking up when she goes in her diaper at night?
Sure. So I think we talked a little bit before about really nighttime dryness is different than potty training during the day. And if your child is being woken up during the night because of a leak or something's happening, it's important to make sure that your product is absorbing enough. We offer nighttime pull-ups for a training pant, and that might be a solution to help keep your child sleeping through the night and uninterrupted. And as your child gets older, there are also Good Night's youth pants, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I think really just trying to do your best to help your child sleep through the night is the best you can do. It's likely out of their control that they're not staying dry overnight.
Do you think if they're waking up when they're going, it's maybe a timing thing? Like, would you go through the process to try to get them to sit on the potty in the middle of the night? Or what would you suggest?
I don't quite have enough context in the situation. If
Okay.
the child's waking up before they go to the bathroom, I think that's actually a really good thing. If they're waking up because they wet in their diaper and their diaper's leaking, or it's after the fact, that's something you just might want to look into a more absorbent product.
Okay, that's great. Another question is from Angela P, a different Angela. Should we take pull-ups away during the day and just put them in underwear?
It's another great question. So pull-ups are really intended to help, be like big kid underwear and help your child learn how to pull up and down and help them on their potty training journey. At some point in the journey, you do need to make a transition to underwear. I think the important part is to be consistent. So if you feel like your child is at the point where you're ready to move to underwear, you certainly need to make that change at some point in the process.
And I will share another personal story in regard to this with my daughter. She was a fashionista and loved to change herself. And so when we went to underwear, she would wet and need to change, and thought that was the best thing ever. So for her, it was better than playing. So she got to go through 10 outfits a day. So it was a challenge for us to try to encourage her to make it to the toilet. And if you wanted to change after that, that was fine. But let's try to make it to the potty and move through that process. So I do remember that transition into underwear well.
Excellent. So we've gotten a lot of questions about nighttime wetting, and I've talked a little bit about how staying dry overnight is different. And I wanted to give a little bit of perspective to how common that condition is and how long it can last, right? So as you're potty training and finished during the day, it's pretty typical for it to take several months for your child to be dry overnight. But it's also not uncommon for it to take longer than that. So if you think about a class of 30 first graders, 5 to 6 of them may still wet the bed at night. And as you get to that age, it's really important, of course, to talk to your pediatrician about that and rule out any medical issues. But most of the time, it still is something developmental that needs to be, that they'll grow out of, right? So it's normal. I don't think parents always realize how frequent it is. And it's something that you can handle, again, with helping your child feel okay about, help them feel as comfortable as they can about the situation, not make them feel bad that they're still wetting the night at that age. And we do offer Goodnight's youth pants, which have a higher absorbency. They're 40% more absorbent than training pants and in larger sizes to fit these children.
Okay, that's great. And for those of you who are just joining us, my name is Lori. I'm with London Drugs, and this is Renee, and she's with Kimberly-Clark. And tonight we're talking about potty training tips and tricks. And so please post your questions, and we will do our very best to answer them. We talked a little bit about when I shared my story about my son and traveling. Do you have any on-the-go potty training tips?
Right. So I think the first thing is to remember as a parent that when you're on the go, you need to schedule time for potty breaks, but also planned, and also be ready for unplanned. So when I was potty training, there was a park we often went to, and I didn't realize there wasn't a bathroom until we were there while we were potty training. So you have to think ahead as a parent of where are you going to take your child to the bathroom. Public restrooms are also pretty scary from a kid's perspective, so anything you can do to help it feel more normal and less intimidating to them is helpful. So things like on toilets that flush automatically can be pretty scary. You can hold a paper towel over the sensor so that it doesn't flush while your child's on it or moving, or anything you can do to keep the experience positive from an encouragement perspective from you is helpful. I think another piece of public restrooms that parents don't like when it's potty training is they're not the cleanest places, let's be honest. But really making sure that you have an approach that is encouraging your children to be comfortable and not scared of the germs will be more beneficial for them.
And I know I personally learned to make sure my potty was accessible
Right.
if we were going on a longer road trip.
Right, and some families definitely take a seat like this or another small potty chair and put it right in the back of their vehicle and use that when they're on the go, when their children are potty training and they're not comfortable with public restrooms. So you really need to do what's working best for your family.
Great. Another question we have is regarding going number 1 versus number 2, and why is number 2 more difficult?
Right. Number 2, definitely going number 2 in the potty typically lags. And I think if you think about our kids, they have only done it in the pant, and from a change perspective, we as parents don't like it and even talk about it as being messy. It takes longer, and I think kids really don't know what to expect by going number 2 in the potty. It can be kind of intimidating for them. So I think the more you can talk about it and try to understand, if your child is nervous about anything, or I think the more potty talk you can have at your house during this time can help things. The other thing is constipation can be a pretty big player with potty training. It can actually help, it can make potty training both from a number 1 and number 2 perspective more difficult. So if you think your child's constipated, it's a good topic to bring up with your pediatrician to see how you can help manage that to make things easier.
And I would guess that sometimes constipation can be caused from the fear of going number 2 in the potty.
Yeah, I believe sometimes it can.
Yeah. For those of you who are just joining us now, my name is Lori. I'm with London Drugs, and this is Renee, and she's with Kimberly-Clark. And tonight we're talking about potty training and giving tips and tricks on how to make this journey a successful one, or as smooth as possible for you and your child. We have another question from Pat. Is it best for parents to have a potty training strategy at home, or is it that is consistent with that of a child's daycare policy?
Right. So I think I've mentioned before, being consistent during potty training is really important. However, if you are potty training your child's in a daycare facility, they may have a potty training approach that's different than yours. And I think that's okay as long as your child understands the expectations and you're comfortable with the daycare's approach. It's important for you to understand what happens from a potty training perspective at daycare, but if it's different than your approach at home and your child understands the expectations in both cases, it can still work.
That's good to know. Another question we have is from Gloria. Any time limit we should let them sit on the potty without going? How long should you wait?
Right. I think a lot of times in the early phases of potty training, parents take their kids to sit on the potty to get used to the feeling and see if they'll go. And really, I think as long as your child is okay with it and you're not forcing them to sit on the potty, I don't know that it hurts to have them sit there for 10, 15 minutes if you're reading a book or engaged in some activity where they're enjoying it. Their parents sometimes put a potty seat in the living room and have their kids sit on it on and off while watching a movie. So really whatever works. Obviously you don't want to force your child to sit on the potty for 45 minutes if they're miserable, right? But if they are willing to sit on it, I don't think it hurts.
Great. Another question from Jane. My 2-year-old was going great until one day she got scared when she realized something was coming out of her when she went on the potty, number 2. She now won't go on the potty, only in her diaper. Tips on how to get her comfortable again.
Yeah, I think as I mentioned before, as much potty talk in your house as you can handle is probably a great approach. There are a number of books on pooping in the potty. I think one of them is called Everybody Poops, but really trying to reassure her that it's normal, everybody poops, and talk about the sensations that she might have as she's going to the bathroom, and do your best to reassure her and calm her fears.
For those of you who are just joining us, my name is Lori. I'm with London Drugs, and this is Renee, and she's with Kimberly-Clark. And today we're answering your questions on potty training and giving tips and tricks on how to make that as smooth as possible for you. Please feel free to post your questions, and we'll do our best to answer as many of them as we can. One more question that we have is around setbacks, and we've talked a bit about this. My child has been doing well, and now they're not showing any interest. They're having accidents or refusing to try. What can we do to help with this?
Right. So I think when you're experiencing setbacks and your child's not interested in potty training, it's important to think through what you're doing and understand, is it something perhaps you want to introduce some new motivational tools, introducing a different reward chart process, or Pull-Ups offers character calls from Disney characters. You can go to pullups.com and have a character call your child and congratulate them on their potty training journey, or give them encouragement as they go along. That's a unique idea. Anything you can do to keep things interesting and new to your child is good. There are, of course, times when you might need to take a break. So if your child's sick or things just really aren't going well and it's hard to keep it positive with your family, it's okay to take a short break and come right back at it when you're ready again.
We have another question from Robin. Any advice on nighttime training? Our child sleeps so deep that he doesn't wake up and ends up going in bed. One of my children is like this as well. We wake him up and take him to the bathroom before we go to bed, but he still ends up wetting the bed before morning.
Right. I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, but nighttime wetting is common and is often something that kids grow out of, and is really bladder maturation and the connection between the brain and the bladder, or child just simply a combination of that and deep sleep. It also sometimes can be hereditary, so children who have parents who are bedwetters are much more likely to be bedwetters themselves. It's important to, of course, discuss this with your pediatrician to rule out any medical issues, but it's likely something that they'll grow out of, and you can support your child in a good night's sleep so they can have a better day by providing an absorbent product to be the least disruption to your nights and mornings.
Great. Well, this is all the time we have tonight. So we thank you very much for asking your questions and watching, and we look forward to seeing you again at our next Facebook Live event.